Hello, I am Jessica Webb, an implementation coordinator at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children at Western University. The Learning Network and Knowledge Hub, two projects hosted by the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children, are proud to organize and co-host the webinar series. The Learning Network is a knowledge mobilization initiative that bridges the gap between current gender-based violence research, practice-based knowledge, and lived experience, while strengthening the capacity of the GBV sector and movement. The Knowledge Hub facilitates a trauma and violence-informed community of practice for projects conducting intervention programming and research for people who have experienced family violence, which is funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada. To learn more about the Learning Network and/or the Knowledge Hub, please access the website links posted in the chat. On behalf of both the Learning Network and the Knowledge Hub, welcome to the webinar. I'd like to begin now with a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that our work is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenape-Wauk, and the Choctaw nations. These lands are connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. Today, this land continues to be home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. We make this an acknowledgement to counter the doctrine of discovery and recognize Indigenous land and sovereignty. We also recognize that many Black people were violently displaced to Canada through settler colonialism and slavery. We will continue to work collaboratively with communities to challenge colonialism, anti-Black racism, and other forms of oppression that remain pervasive in Canada and that result in disproportionate impacts of gender-based violence on oppressed communities. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Arts for Creative Healing Communities, Gender-Based Violence Work and Prevention with Immigrant and Refugee Families. We are so pleased to be joined today by Kristen Kong, Fernanda Camejo, and Laurence Gauthier, who are here to share their experience implementing art-based programs with newcomer and immigrant people who may have experienced gender-based violence. Kristen, Fernanda, and Laurence are members of a trauma-informed community of practice facilitated by the Knowledge Hub. You can find more details and their full bios in the link provided in the chat. Today, the order of presentations will start with Kristen, then go to Fernanda and Laurence. And I invite them to come on screen now and join us.
Hi everyone. Bonjour, bonjour à tout le monde.
Hey, hi everyone.
Hello,
Good
everyone.
afternoon. So good afternoon. You are here because you want to learn a little bit about art. Art engagement is an ancient practice all around the world, and it helps us to document history, engage people, and it has the power to move, heal, and transform. Art helps us to understand ourselves and others by activating all our senses, make meaning, and to bring new perspectives different than the ones that we are living. So let me ask you today, when was the last time that you engaged in art? Maybe visited an art gallery, engaged in an artful event or cultural celebration? What new learnings about humanity did you take away? How did it make you feel? So today we're really excited because we're going to be engaging in an art gallery tour, and we don't even have to commute. Galleries are not just places to witness art or artifacts, but they are essential spaces for mental health and emotional well-being. And in these very quiet, reflective environments, we're invited to slow down, engage deeply, and step outside of our everyday routines. This webinar is structured to mimic an art gallery experience curated by two project teams, PEO in Montreal and Access Alliance, Multicultural Health and Community Services in Toronto. Both of our organizations are funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada, Preventing and Addressing Family Violence, to work in and with newcomer communities at risk or are survivors of gender-based domestic violence. We have come together because both our projects also share artistic interventions for prevention and healing of trauma experiences. So sit back and we are going to share a glimpse of our world of imagination, play, and creative expression. So Fernanda and Lawrence will share now the curator intentions.
Would you mind, Kristen, to change the slide to the next one?
I think who is doing the French slides, you can change it to the next slide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So OK. Alors, les approches, en fait, on aimerait vous amener vers
So we want
les
to
approches fondées sur les genres.
talk to
Comment
you
ces approches,
about
en
arts-based
fait,
approaches and
réfléchir avec vous, comment ces
how these
approches peuvent
approaches
être utilisées dans les milieux
can be
communautaires pour
used
améliorer
in
le
community
bien-être,
environments to
favoriser
improve people's
l'intégration, le
well-beings,
sentiment
to
d'appartenance,
foster
la
integration,
résilience et
a
la
sense of
biodiversité
belonging,
à
resilience,
travers
and
les
healing
genres des réfugiés. On
within
aimerait
the
explorer
immigrant
avec
and
vous
refugee
le rôle du
communities. We want to
récit,
explore with you the role of
l'image,
storytelling and
en tant qu'outil
imagery as
d'engagement
tools for engagement
pour amplifier la voix
in order
des
to
nouveaux entrants
amplify the voices of
empathiques
newcomers,
et dans une
and
pratique qui tient compte des
this within a
traumatismes
trauma-informed
basés sur
practice.
le genre. On a dû cerner les compétences
We
et les connaissances
we have
qui ont
identified skills and
soutenu
knowledge that will support
programmes de
facilitation
scolarisation
of
pour,
arts-based
surtout pour les
programs
personnes immigrantes et les
for
migrants
immigrants and
qui
newcomers
ont
who
probablement
have
subi des
experienced
expériences traumatiques.
trauma.
Aussi, on a compris comment nos
We've also
interventions
seen and
sont
understood how
fondées sur les
arts-based
genres et d'être
interventions can
maintenues dans
be
une vie communautaire
sustained within
et
community-based
déclencher
settings
des forces de transformation.
and how they can really be transformative.
Next
Thank you.
slide, please.
Okay, so as we enter the gallery together, here are some prompts to keep in mind. You can take a screenshot or a photo and make some notes. So some of the prompts are: what surprised you? What was new for you? What made you feel hopeful or inspired? What resonated with you? What aligned or did not align with your experiences? And what are you more curious about? What questions may you have? What colors or visual markers do you observe? And how does that make you feel? So I hope you keep these in mind as we showcase various visual elements and stories throughout this presentation. Next slide. When we were preparing as a group for this gallery, Laurence, Fernanda, and I came together and identified 5 major themes that emerged within both our distinct projects. These themes include the power of arts, ethics, boundaries, and animations, voice, healing, and belonging, sustainability, and messages of hope. So these themes really are going to underpin the flow of this gallery. So let's get started. Next slide.
Voilà, on voit ici
So here
des photos et on voulait vous
we can
montrer
see
comment
photos.
pendant ces ateliers, on
We
a
wanted
essayé
to
de
show
répondre
you
aux besoins
how
de la
in
communauté
workshops we
à
tried
travers
addressing the
différentes
community's
expressions
needs
artistiques.
using various forms of
Oui, parce que
artistic expression.
pour nous, c'était important
Because it was
d'offrir
important
une
for us
variété
to offer a variety
d'outils d'expression
of
artistique tels
tools
que le conte,
for
la
artistic
musique,
expressions such as
l'art
storytelling,
visuel et
music, visual arts.
toutes les formes d'expression par le
So
mouvement
all
et la danse
forms of
ont été intégrées
expression,
afin de permettre à
dance,
chaque
movement, everything was
groupe,
integrated
chaque
so that
individu
we could enable every
participant aux
individual, every
activités
group
de
participating in the
s'exprimer dans son
activities,
mode
the ability
d'expression
to express
privilégié, donc de
themselves
pouvoir
in their
faire émerger leur plein
preferred
potentiel
form.
chacun et
So
chacune.
we really wanted people to reach their full
Next slide,
potential.
please. Voilà. Voilà que sur cette photo, on voit
So
deux
on this
familles qui ont
photo, you see
participé
two
dans les
families who
ateliers.
have participated in the workshops.
C'est des ateliers qui, malgré que certaines familles ne
So
parlent
even
pas
though
la
some
langue, ça nous a
families didn't
profondément
speak the
touchés.
language, it really
C'est
touched us
voir comment, à
to
travers
be
leur
able to
isolement au
see
départ,
how
euh, ils ont progressivement
they were
trouvé à
able
travers la
to
création
progressively
des
find ways
manifestations
of
puissantes
expressing themselves through creation.
dans le groupe,
And these were
comme
powerful
c'est arrivé
ways
pour moi
within
dans
the
la vie
group.
individuelle.
And
Et
this happened even with families we worked with
à
individually.
travers le jeu, les rituels
They
créatifs, les
used
images, tout cela,
game,
on fait tomber les
recreation,
barrières,
images,
parfois
etc.
des simples
Everything
gestes ou
helped
apprendre, moi,
to overcome the
dans notre propre
obstacles, and
langue, ça fait de
they
la
were.
différence et ça ferait que les
This
familles
really
sont
made a
beaucoup plus
difference, and
curieuses.
it
Donc,
helped
cela
families
nous
open
a
up.
permis de contourner les mots
So this is where we were able to
parce
get
que
around the use
plusieurs
of
familles
words.
qui ont
It was
assisté à
through the
l'atelier ne
arts,
parlaient ni
because a
l'anglais
lot of
ni
the
le
families that were
français.
there didn't speak either English or French.
Donc, ça a ouvert un espace
So
symbolique
this
où on
really
pouvait
opened a
se
symbolic space
communiquer,
where we could communicate
déposer les
together.
peurs, déposer les
We could
rêves,
set aside,
déposer
we could put there our
sans
fears,
jugement
our
toutes les émotions
dreams,
qu'on avait avec
everything
ces
without
enfants
judgment,
migrants
all of
et
our
leur
feelings
création.
to be there to create.
Donc, ça pouvait être un moyen pour
So
les
this
familles
was a way for
d'intégrer ce
families
qu'elles
to
avaient été et vécu
integrate what they had
avant
been
dans
and what
leur
they had
pays
lived
d'origine et ce qu'elles
before
voulaient
in their
devenir
country of origin.
où elles étaient ici.
And they could
C'est
think
des
about
familles
what
qui
they
ont
wanted to become while they were
éprouvé
here.
beaucoup
These were families
des fois beaucoup de précarité, beaucoup de
who
difficultés dans le quotidien en étant
had several
immigrants.
difficulties on a
Donc,
daily
ce
basis.
truc-là
They
et
had
ce moment de
precarious
partage leur permettait
status, among
de
others.
vivre un moment
So
où même
this sharing helped them have
ça
a
pouvait
moment
renforcer le lien
and have an
parent-enfant
experience
aussi,
and
parce
reinforce
qu'avec ces
the
familles qui viennent
relationship
d'arriver, qui
between
sont beaucoup en mode
parent and child,
survie,
because a lot of the
il n'y a
families
pas
coming
de
here are in
temps pour
survival mode and they
communiquer et
don't
de
have
vivre
time
quelque chose de
to
vraiment
communicate, to
qualifié
really
des fois
share
en
an
famille,
experience, a quality
en
experience
train
as a
d'oublier les
family,
problèmes.
and this
C'est
enables
au
them
sein de
to
cet
forget their
atelier-là qu'on s'est
problems.
rendu compte que les
And
familles
it's through this
zélées
workshop that we
aussi se
noticed that
parlaient
families were coming,
ensemble,
that they could talk
créer, se
together,
montrer et aussi
create
retrouver
together,
les
and
enfants. Parce que
really
les enfants, on
find,
avait vu
discover
qu'ils
their
étaient
children anew.
comme une fleur au soleil lors
Because,
de nos ateliers,
children were like a
avec les
flower in the
parents
sun in
par-dessus
our
la
workshops,
barrière,
and they
les
were
autres
like that
participants.
with their parents and
Mhm.
with the other participants.
Également, ce qu'on a observé, puis ce
What we've
qu'on
also
connaît déjà dans
observed
les
and what we
recherches, c'est
already
que l'art
know through
permet vraiment
research is that
d'explorer
art really allows
parfois un
people to
vécu
explore
traumatique.
a
Alors, les
traumatic lived
personnes
experience.
nouvellement arrivées, les réfugiés, on ne
So
connaît pas
people
toute
come
leur
here,
histoire, on ne
newcomers,
connaît pas tout
refugees,
leur
we don't know their
parcours.
full
On
story. We don't
essaye
know
de mettre
all
les
their
mots dessus. Ils
migratory
ont vécu beaucoup
trajectory.
de moments
But what we do
d'adversité.
know is that
Et
they've
donc,
gone
leur
through a lot of
passé n'a pas été
adversity.
facile. Il
Their
y a
past
parfois eu de la
was
violence
hard. Sometimes there's been
dans leur
violence
pays d'origine ou dans le cadre
in
du
the country
parcours,
of
mais dans
origin or
les livres
during
qu'on
their
retrouve, on voit que
migration
l'art
trajectory.
permet
But we
d'explorer
see
des thèmes
that art enables them
qui
to
auraient
explore
parfois des
topics,
mémoires difficiles, même
to explore
traumatiques, de
sometimes
façon non
traumatic or
violente.
painful
C'est-à-dire qu'on
memories.
peut
And,
parfois l'incarner par un personnage,
sometimes we
dans
can
le sens
embody
qu'on
it
prend une
through a
distance
character,
face à la
and we're
mémoire
able to take
traumatique,
a step
une
back when it comes
distance
to the trauma.
sécuritaire qui
And this
permet
enables
d'explorer
us
puis
to feel
d'intégrer ces
safe and to
expériences
explore
vécues
and
dans le
to
passé
integrate those lived experiences from
pour
the
créer
past
un
so that we're
sentiment
able to
d'unité
create
intérieure
a
qui portant dans la
unified
guérison.
feeling within ourselves,
Un
which
autre
enables healing.
facette, c'est que oui,
Another aspect
on fait de l'art
is
avec les
that,
familles
yes,
et
we're
c'est
doing
aidant
arts
pour
with
leur
the families,
bien-être
and this
mental et
helps
mental,
their
mais c'est
well-being and
des
their
outils
mental
qu'on leur
health.
donne, des
But
outils
these are
qu'on leur
tools
donne
that we're
pour que dans
providing
leur
them
quotidien,
so that on a
ils
daily
puissent
basis
intégrer l'art
in their daily lives, they're able to
faire face
integrate
à
arts.
l'adversité
And
et aussi
this
qu'elles
helps
reprennent,
them
parce que
overcome
comme c'est
adversity
permanent,
and face
il y a
daily
beaucoup
stresses because, as we've said,
de familles qui sont en mode survie
several
et il y a
families are
beaucoup
in
de
survival
précarité dans
mode, and
certains
there's a
cas.
lot of
Donc, ça leur
precarity
permet
in
de,
these families.
de créer un bond sur
And
le quotidien
this
de ces
enables
familles.
them to create a daily
L'importance d'un
bond.
travail d'intervenant par l'art, parce que
Our
bien que nous sommes formés en
work was
développement
important,
personnel,
even though we're formed
nous
through arts
devons
therapy.
réfléchir sur
We have to
la réactivation possible du
reflect
vécu.
on
Donc, on
how
doit
we could
choisir
possibly
consciencieusement
reactivate pain.
les activités
So we have to
envisagées
consciously
afin
choose
d'éviter
activities
simplement de
so that we
réactiver des
can
traumatismes,
avoid
parce que ce n'est pas
reactivating
l'objectif de nos ateliers.
trauma, because that's not the objective of these
Alors, on peut
workshops here.
passer à
Let's move on to the next slide,
prochaine
please.
diapositive. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this next image you can see a rubber duck that sits at the very center of this landscape, exposing its surroundings, environment, and it's really needing a home. So this activity, building a nest together, marks the beginning of our programs. We invite participants to co-create a safe and trusting, secure nest for this bird. And this is one way of establishing group guidelines for the group as well. The various items spread across the table is a collection of nature objects harvested from Access Alliance's rooftop garden with other art resources. Participants went around the table and used these to build and make together. This approach really reflected a collectivist mindset, very common in a lot of newcomer cultures. It allows each person to feel a part of a greater whole while being distinct in their own contributions. We know that social isolation has immense impact on mental well-being, and this is even more heightened for those who have experienced violence. And so art is really a platform, between the self and the collective, moving back and forth. It is the coming together, enhancing a sense of belonging among a lot of the participants, and many of them were strangers at first. I think the act of creating together really quickly strengthens the idea of trust and teamwork and collaboration. And many of them felt like they were returning to their childlike self. I remember one of the participants was very hesitant at the beginning and asked, how can I build a home for this bird if I can't even build a home for myself? And as the activity went on, once the nest was built and it was finished, she looked at it, she observed it, felt it, and exclaimed, this bird is happy because all of us came together and built the nest for her. And it continues. Almost 2 years later, after we did this activity, I was on a call with one of our peer researchers that we trained to support the implementation of this program. And she shared how she overheard participants saying they continued to identify themselves as birds. And this was one way that helped them understand the many happenings in their life. So art is powerful. It imprints us with lessons that stick far beyond a program or intervention has ended. And this was one of many activities and journeys where participants engaged in metaphors, movement of creation, and co-engagement with each other. Okay, next. So now let's take a wander outside. This is the heart of Dentonia Park. This is located in the East End of Toronto. And you can see here a group of Bengali HEAL participants engage in a therapeutic practice using dance ribbons. The image really captures something called somatic resourcing. It is coming to life through color and dance and music. Through the flowing motions of ribbons, participants can visually experience, the profound connection between your mind and your body, while integrating gestures that symbolize different emotions. Many share that it reminded them of traditional dances back at home. So, it's something familiar, but also something new. I think expressive arts tools really harness that body strength, right, to promote self and co-regulation. Many symptoms, part of violence, are symptoms of PTSD, disassociation, anxiety, heightened emotional response, fear and detachment. So all of these things live within the body. So it's very important that we acknowledge that we're using the body when we're talking about and reenacting trauma healing. So in the same way, during a lot of guest presentations on human rights, healthy relationships, participants were invited to engage with plasticine modeling or watercolor to simultaneously self-regulate while they were listening to healthcare and settlement knowledge. And we actually found that they were able to retain the knowledge a lot better. So art is a powerful tool or vehicle for psychoeducation, reenacting concepts of mental health, and also adapting a lot of this knowledge into their own life. Okay, next.
Voilà, sur ces photos, on voit deux familles
So
qui
in
sont
these
en train
photos, we see two families
créer,
who
avec des mandalas.
are
On a
creating with
essayé
mandala.
d'utiliser des référents
we
culturels
tried
pour que les familles
using
se sentent
cultural references so that
derrière.
families would
Ça me
feel
fait
more
penser ce
comfortable.
qu'elle a montré Christine
And
avec
that made me
ses
think of what
nids,
Christelle
parce
showed
que
with her
c'était une
nest,
façon
because it was a
où
way
les personnes pouvaient
for
vivre,
people to
euh, représenter leur récit
really
de façon
represent
sécuritaire,
their
comme tu le
story
dis,
in a
d'une
safe
façon
manner, their
sécuritaire,
life story in a
même
safe manner.
au-delà des mots, parce que des fois, il n'y
And
avait pas de
this
mots
going
pour
beyond words,
parler.
because sometimes there are no words.
Ils pouvaient créer ce
And
micro-espace,
so they were able to create this micro space,
micro-monde où
this
ils
micro
allaient y
world.
arriver, y montrer leur histoire de
They
façon
could show their story in
sécuritaire
this
pour eux.
way, and it was safe for them.
Même si notre équipe est
So
formée
even though our
de
team
thérapie par les
is
arts,
trained
nous
in
n'utilisons pas
arts-based
le
therapy,
terme
we don't
de
use
thérapie dans nos
the
interventions
term
parce que le
therapy in our
cadre communautaire
interventions
est
because it's a
préventif.
community
Posture
framework
thérapeutique est
and a
présent.
preventative
On a un
framework, but the
respect,
practice is
on a
present.
un respect du
We
vécu,
practice
c'est-à-dire
active
on respecte
listening, we try and
nous, on
respect
peut
the lived experience, and we do our
donner un
best
espace de sécurité
to
émotionnelle
provide a safe
et on
space
est
for
on a une
emotional
flexibilité
emotions.
constante
And we
sur
have a
comment
constant
bénéficier aux familles
flexibility
du mieux qu'on
in
peut.
how we try
Euh,
to make sure that the
Dès que
family
nous
benefits as much
observons
as
que des
possible.
intentions ont un impact
You know, we
thérapeutique
know that our
auprès des
intentions
familles,
have a therapeutic
l'objectif
impact
principal,
with the
c'est
families, but our
de
principal
bien-être dans la
objective
prévention.
is
Euh,
well-being
donc,
within prevention.
c'était plutôt ça, notre travail sur la prévention.
So that's
Donc,
the
des
work we
fois, il y
did
avait,
with
on
regards to
orientait
prevention,
nos interventions
even though sometimes
vers des choses
to
qu'on
direct
voyait
our interventions
observer
towards
auprès des
things we were
familles.
seeing within families in the
Pour
moment.
faire suite avec
To
l'aspect
follow up
d'éthique de
on
notre
the
travail qui était vraiment
ethics of
parlant,
our work
pour
when
nous,
it
c'était
comes
très, très
to
important
the arts-based
d'aborder
interventions, we
ce
thought it was
travail avec une
important
approche réflexive.
to
Donc, de
really
travailler
use a
sur
reflexive approach.
notre propre
So to work
ressenti face à l'expérience
on
de
our
l'intervention avec les
feelings
familles.
within the
Comme il y avait la
experience
barrière de
of
la
the
langue,
intervention and
parfois il y a des
since there was that
situations
language
dans le cadre de nos
barriers,
interventions avec les
sometimes
familles qui nous amenaient
we
parfois
found
dans des
that
zones
working with
moins
families,
confortables
we
où on
had some
voyait certains
uncomfortable zones
préjugés,
where we
ressortir des
might have to face
préjugés
some of our
qu'on pouvait
biases or where
avoir. Donc,
some of our
parfois,
biases might come to
l'éthique
light.
devait
So
être
the
de
ethical work
réfléchir
had to
sur
be
nos
done, and
propres
we had to
barrières,
reflect on our own
sur nos propres
biases,
limites
on our
également en tant
own
que parents.
limitations
Et
as
pour
our
travailler aussi
boundaries
en
as
thérapie par les arts,
workers.
on utilise ce qu'on appelle la
And to
réponse
work
d'armes.
through
C'est une
arts,
réponse
we use an
créative
arts-based response, which is
à
a creative
l'intervention
response within the
réussie.
intervention.
Travail de réponse
So
par l'art
this
permet vraiment de mieux comprendre ce qui
response
se
through
passe
arts really
intérieurement
helps us
dans
better understand
nos
what
interventions pour
we feel
mieux
inside
adapter. On
as
voit ici les
workers
images
so
sur
that
le
we're able to
terrain.
adapt. We see here
On a dû
images of
adapter
work
parce
that was
qu'on
done on the
démarre
ground,
un
and we had to
travail
adapt ourselves
thérapeutique avec des matériaux très
because,
très marqueurs,
we had
plats,
started with markers and
assis sur des
crayons,
tables. On a vu
colored
que
crayons, and
ce
working at
n'était
a
pas
table.
adapté
And we saw
culturellement
that this
et ça
wasn't
collait pas
culturally sensible and that it wasn't really
le
creating
niveau de confort
the
aussi
level of
qu'on
comfort, safety that we wanted to
souhaitait
establish. So we decided to
essayer
create
de
on the
répondre
ground, and this really enabled us
de
to
rejoindre les familles
reach the
du vécu
families
professionnel. On a vu
culturally.
aussi que pour eux, c'était plus facile
We
de
also saw that it
s'ouvrir
was easier for
et
the
d'ouvrir la
families to
porte
open
aussi
up
à
and
une
to
certaine
open the door
vulnérabilité.
to become
Donc,
more
au niveau éthique, vous
vulnerable.
devez toujours garder
So
en tête
ethically, we had to keep
l'adapter
in mind that we had to
projet
continually
artistique
adapt
aux
our
familles.
artistic
Comme disait
projects
Fernanda, le
to meet
mandala
the family's needs.
contient est un
As
espace de
was
sécurité.
said, this was a safe
Dans tous
space
les
using
images qu'on vous
mandala.
présente
In
aujourd'hui, il y
all
a
of the images we're showing
question
you today,
de consentement. Toutes les familles qui
you
ont
know,
participé au
the
projet de
people have
recherche.
consented. These are people who have
Donc,
participated in the
on a
research
des photos,
project.
parfois des
So we have
interventions, mais en
photos
quelque
of the
sorte,
interventions,
on a des images où on ne voit pas les visages afin de protéger
and we don't see
l'anonymat
faces so
et
that we can
respecter la
make
vie
sure
des
that people
participants
remain
et des
anonymous and we
d'entre
can
nous
respect
dans le cadre de notre
people's
travail. Et donc,
confidentiality
comme je
and
disais tantôt,
private
pour
life.
éviter
And
justement
as I've
de
said
réactiver des
earlier,
blessures
wanted to
et
avoid
disrespecter le
reactivating
passé
trauma
des
and
personnes qui nous accompagnent,
old past
on doit
experiences.
expérimenter nous-mêmes ce
And
qu'on
for that,
propose.
we need to
Si on
experience or to
on ne peut
experiment with
pas
what we're proposing.
reconnaître les
If
limites
we don't do
de
that, we
notre
can't
proposition,
recognize
si
the
on
limits
accepte
of what we're proposing. We can't
des angles morts qui
recognize
pourraient,
the
encore une fois,
blind
réactiver des
spots
blessures
that could
ou
reactivate pain
susciter en fait
or could
des émotions qui ne sont pas
provoke
nécessaires. Cependant,
emotions
on est là pour
that
accueillir toute
are
émotion
not necessary,
difficile
but we're
qui
there
peut
to
émerger
welcome
et
all
de
the difficult
contenir
emotions that might
ce qui est
emerge
exprimé dans le groupe de
and
façon
to make sure that we have a safe and confidential space where people can express themselves. So next slide, please.
So in this image, you can see two people standing in two hand-drawn circles. One of them is red and one of them is green. And they're facing each other in dialogue without words, but really in each other's presence. So this really captures participants' exploration in the concept of boundaries that Fernanda and Lawrence is talking about, using drawing or reenactment, movement or visual symbolism and voice. And these creative practices offer more than just self-expression, but they actively reinforce an embodiment understanding of personal and relational boundaries. Boundaries was one of the major topics of discussion in groups, not only on the research side, but also on the program side. And art was a choice. People engaged at many different capacities, and we also want to parallel that disclosure is also a choice. As people got to know us and each other, people chose how much they wanted to disclose based on their comfortability. And we know that, again, like we are saying, trauma impacts the speech functioning of our brain. So sometimes even when we cannot verbalize does not mean that we do not have a story to tell. And so art really allows for that alternate, option or avenue that they can retell stories using their senses in whatever large or small capacity that they want to. Next slide. And so here you can see a collage of many things. You can see a lady in a green dress, and her name is Afsane. She was our Farsi main arts facilitator, and she was gazing across the room, instructing about the polyvagal theory, about trauma. And there's also many images that you see of the various surveys that we conducted throughout the program. And like Laurence was saying, we adapted so many things because some things really just didn't work. Holding true to community-based participatory research, we also saw that it was important that participants were integrated at every single stage of the project. Their feedback was really pivotal for us to gain insights on how effective the program was, but more importantly, to give insights on the greater system that they were interacting with around domestic violence or around systems and resources that they were accessing. Bringing them along too also mitigates this idea of extracting information, and we are bringing the community inwards. So our programs really, are a co-creation with our participants to help honor their experiences, but also give us, information on what works and what doesn't. And so during the feedback, there are so many complex layers and you realize everything, is interconnected. But there were so many more months, to come that we'll share more about the learnings that we've received. Okay, next slide. Oh, Fernanda, you're just muted there.
Merci,
Okay,
Kristen.
Thank you, Kristen.
Voilà qu'on voit
So here we
deux
see
photos, c'est
two
des familles qui
pictures
participent aux
of
ateliers de groupe.
families
Ces ateliers
in
sont
the
devenus
group
de lieux de
workshops.
rencontre
They are
pour
meeting places,
les personnes
really,
nouvellement arrivées. C'était des
for
lieux où les
newcomers.
gens pouvaient se
These are
rencontrer
places where people
et,
could meet
vraiment
and
grandir à travers la force du
really
groupe.
grow
Parce que
through
on
the strength of
trouvait
the
des
group
personnes
because
qui résonnaient,
we
on vivait la même expérience.
found
Et
people
ça a
who
beaucoup
resonated to the same
d'importance quand on vient
experiences of
d'arriver et on n'a
life.
pas de lien, on n'a pas
And
de
that's
tissu social, on
very
doit tout refaire.
significant when you just
Alors
arrived and you
c'était
have no
quelque chose
links,
de très
no,
important
and
pour
you
nous
must
aussi et
rebuild
pour tout le
everything.
monde.
So it was
C'est un
very
endroit où ils
significant
pouvaient être
for us
vus,
and for everyone.
entendus.
A place where
Les enfants
everyone can
pouvaient être
be
vus
heard,
différemment
seen.
par les
The
parents et
children
pouvaient
can be
aussi
seen
voir les parents d'une
differently
façon
by their own
différente,
parents
en train
and
de
see
jouer,
their
de créer,
parents
de
differently
mimer.
themselves.
Et aussi, le
The
groupe en
parents are
soi
playing as
pouvait
well
faire ça.
and
On pouvait
engaging in various
vivre des
activities.
émotions, comme
So
avait dit Laurence
the emotions can
avant,
be
toutes les
felt
émotions pouvaient être expérimentées en jouant.
and
Les
experienced
personnages
by
qu'on
play.
pouvait
and
expérimenter la
there was
colère
characters
sans
that
être
can be
réprimés,
built
ou
that
la
can express
tristesse, ou la joie, ou
anger or
la
sadness or
communication d'une autre
joy
façon
or
via
communicate in another way
certains contes ou certaines
via
créations qu'on allait faire.
storytelling and some
Et
creative
en étant
activities.
accueillis, les
And
familles pouvaient montrer leurs forces,
families could
les forces
also
qu'ils avaient en commun
show
comme
their
communauté,
strengths,
les
the
forces
strengths
qui
they
les
had in
amenaient
common
de leur
as a
vécu auparavant,
community and
mais aussi
strengths
les
that
forces
brought them
qu'ils étaient en train
unto this point, and also
de
the strength
connaître de soi,
that they are
parce
building
que
and that they are
quand
recognizing in
quand
themselves.
on vit
Because
la créativité,
when creativity is
c'était quelque chose
lived,
que on voulait
this
qu'ils
is
amènent
something
comme un outil de vie.
that
On
can
veut
become
toujours
a
créer
tool for
dans notre
life,
vie de nouveaux
because
espaces, de
that can
nouvelles
help
façons
create
de
in your life
vivre,
new
mais pas
spaces, new
seulement,
ways to
on peut se
perceive,
créer
and
une nouvelle communauté, une nouvelle vie, mais aussi
a
une
new
nouvelle façon
community,
de
a new
vivre
life,
les
and a
expériences de
new
notre
way
vie.
to live your
Et c'est à travers
experiences.
cette
That's
flexibilité
what
de la création,
families
quand on trouve un problème, quand
found.
c'est
So,
là
and this is
qu'on rencontre un problème,
also
on
for
peut contourner
families
le
a way
problème en
to
créant quelque chose d'autre.
approach
Mais c'est quelque
their
chose,
problems
cet
to in a
apprentissage-là,
different way
ils pouvaient
through
l'amener
this learning,
dans leur
and
vie en
that can be
famille aussi,
integrated in their
pour la
family life and their
prévention
lives
euh,
after that to
de la
prevent
violence qu'on voulait tant
violence
travailler,
that
en
we really
sachant
wanted
que
to
quand les familles sont
get to,
vulnérables et
so that
vivent beaucoup de
we knowing
difficultés,
that families that are vulnerable and
il
going
y a une
through
prédisposition
hardship
au conflit.
are
Et on
more
voulait vraiment
vulnerable to conflict.
soutenir une autre
And we
façon de
wanted to
communication qui
support
puisse
another way of communicating that
permettre aux
could
familles
allow
de communiquer,
families
de mieux
to
communiquer avec d'autres
better
outils et
communicate
pouvoir
with more
éviter les moments
tools
de
so
violence
they could avoid
intrafamiliale.
C'était
family violence moments.
très important. Et puis, une chose qui a
And
facilité l'ouverture des
one
familles
thing
également,
that facilitated
que ce soit l'ouverture
the
quand les
opening
familles
of
nous ouvraient leurs
families,
portes
whether
pour nos
when the
interventions à
families
domicile ou que ce
opened
soit
their
dans le
doors
cadre
when we
d'interventions de
went to
groupe
their house,
de
or when
famille,
whether it
on a
was
toujours maintenu
workshop
la posture
in a group,
d'accueil et de
we
non-jugement. C'est
always
essentiel pour
were
nous d'être dans le
welcoming and
non-jugement parce que les
non-judgmental.
familles
That
vivent
was
des réalités
essential
tellement
for us
différentes et diverses.
because
Et
families
notre
have
travail
such
n'est
different
pas
and diverse lives,
de
and
leur montrer
our
la voie
work
sur
is not to
comment
show them the way,
être des bons parents,
how to be good parents, how
comment
to
gérer leur quotidien familial. Ça,
manage
c'est
their
des choses
daily life
qui leur
as a
appartiennent. On
family.
croit beaucoup
That's
en
their
le travail
domain.
d'empowerment
We
qu'on doit
really
faire par
believe in
art. Et
empowerment
pour ça,
uh,
on doit,
that
comme
we
disait Fernanda,
achieved
valoriser leurs forces,
through
mais aussi
recognizing strengths,
leur
but
donner
also
confiance en leurs
by
capacités. Donc,
building
pour ça,
trust in their capacity.
c'est pour ça qu'on
And
on travaille dans
this
la
is why
flexibilité. Parce que
we
oui,
work with
on amène des
flexibility,
propositions
because yes,
artistiques,
we
mais on
offer
laisse beaucoup
uh,
la place
art
aux imprévus et à ce que les
possibilities, but
familles
we
veulent
leave the
exprimer et
space
veulent
for
apporter au groupe. Donc,
unplanned
dans ce
and
sens, pour nous,
mm,
c'est
things the
essentiel de
families want to
créer
bring to
l'ouverture
the
pour
group.
que les
So
familles
it's essential for
prennent
us to
confiance en leur
create that
capacité et
opening
puissent
so that
exprimer
families get
leurs
to
rêves, leurs
trust their
ambitions
capacity and can
et aussi
express
leurs
their
défis
dreams, their ambitions,
au
and their
quotidien
challenges
familial.
on a daily basis.
Et comme disait
Um,
Fernanda aussi,
and
quand on
as
fait de l'art,
Fernanda was
ça
saying,
permet
when
d'explorer de
art is
nouvelles
made,
façons
it allows
d'être,
to
de nouvelles façons
explore
de
new
faire.
ways of
Et
being, of
aussi, ça
doing,
amène
and
une ouverture vers des
it
nouvelles
also
perspectives,
brings
des
an
nouvelles
opening
perspectives de la
towards
situation
new
actuelle dans le moment présent, mais
perspectives
aussi des nouvelles
on a
perspectives de
situation,
l'avenir. Donc,
a
c'est là
present
où
or future.
l'espoir peut
And this is where
être retrouvé
hope
pour un avenir
can
meilleur.
can be
L'espoir, c'est
reborn
vraiment au cœur
towards a
du
new
travail.
and
On
better
utilise beaucoup de
future.
termes de la
And
magie dans nos
we use
interventions,
the
de
word
la
magic
magie,
in our
l'émerveillement que suscite
interventions,
l'art
but the
permet de
magic, the
retrouver cet espoir-là
wonder
qui est
that
souvent
art
enseveli
is
par-dessus tout le
that
stress
brings about art
et tous
really allows to
la précarité des
work
familles
through
et
the
la
stress
survivance que ces familles-là
and
doivent vivre au
precarity
quotidien.
and the
Donc,
survival
cette
challenges that
magie-là,
these families
l'art le
have on a daily
suscite et
basis. So
permet
this
vraiment
artistic
de
magic
travailler la guérison,
really
de donner
works
une voix à ces
towards
communautés-là qui sont marginalisées
healing
et de
and
créer le
towards
sentiment
a
d'appartenance
voice,
en leur
giving a voice
communauté, parce que
for
ça,
these
c'est essentiel pour
marginalized
leur
and
bien-être et
vulnerable
leur
communities,
épanouissement.
and to
Alors,
bring about a feeling of belonging,
c'est ça,
which is
je vais
necessary
proposer qu'on
for going
poursuive
forward
la
uh,
diapositive
in
suivante. Il y aurait beaucoup à
for
dire, on
these
va continuer
families.
à
I
en
could
parler à la
say a lot
prochaine.
more, but let's go to the next slide.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go outside again, and this time to Access Alliance Rooftop Garden. Programs implemented in the spring and summer were done outdoors as much as possible because participants, like Fernanda and Lawrence is saying, context is so key. And many of them talked about green spaces because it reminded them of home. A lot of newcomers come from countries with vast landscapes, mountains and valleys, forests and rivers. And so they told us nature supported their stress management. They provided respite, feelings of familiarity and calm. And so when program planning, we built environments or positioned ourselves in places where participants felt that belonging and welcome. Also, you can see at the center of this image is a traditional bunna ceremony setup. These are often hosted in Ethiopia or Eritrea, and it's a ritual that can go on for hours where you share coffee and snacks and sweet incense, and many, many conversations happened. And so we set this up for participants. We use the strength of their culture to really guide our discussions and gatherings. So our Tigrinya speaking women incorporated the Bunda ceremony 3 times in the course of our 12-week program. And during that time, it helped to also destigmatize mental health conversations that we were gathering around, drinking coffee together, talking about very difficult topics. And we started to continue asking, what are ways that you gather in your own culture? What are existing approaches that exist? And how can we integrate that in the knowledge that we are wanting to share with you? Because these are places and sites for mental health and well-being discussions. And so we see participants as cultural consultants. They help us culturally tailor programs. You don't have to look far and wide, and they're relevant, and it makes them really proud to share about their culture. Okay, next slide. Okay, so you can see here, many, many people gathered. There are many women in these photos, but I want to draw your attention to the woman at the very bottom in the center, holding up her collage, and her name is Kian. And this is a recent photo of her in the past month, but her journey began 2 years ago when she attended our very first HEAL program. She gained knowledge, on mental health, shared cultural identity, um, really gained understanding of healthcare and settlement. And following the program, she stayed connected with us. And Kian now is making very significant impacts on our Access Lines art programs. On the left-hand side, you can see her using a button machine with one of our community artists. And on the right-hand side, she is part of a puppet making session talking about our ancestors. And Kian shared with us that she uses arts to open up her mind, to expand her thinking, similar to what we're talking about, imagination and magic. She said that she can feel something develop in her when she engages with the arts, and she feels like she has something special to offer, a skill or a talent. And and she let us know that she's also applying at the moment to Humber College for their well-being coaching program. So you can see, even after a program has ended, there are many ripple effects that happen for a lot of our participants. And this is one of many sunshine or success stories. So when we speak about healing, voice, or belonging, often these indicators are seen far down the line in someone's life. But yeah, pondering and asking ourselves, what are the models of care after a person has finished an intervention, or strategies for sustainability are there? Next slide.
Oui, comme vient de mentionner Christine, ce
Yes, as
travail
Kristen
de
mentioned,
préparation aujourd'hui nous a amené vers une
this
réflexion sur la
work
pérennité
brought us to think
durant
about, to reflect
l'intervention par
on
l'art. Et on a
sustainability in
souhaité
this
réfléchir
program
ensemble sur
uh,
comment
of
assurer une
healing
pérennité.
through
Parce que quand
art
on
and
termine nos
intervention
interventions
through art.
avec les
And
familles,
this
on se retrouvait
entire
parfois
program
dans
really
un sentiment
brought us to ask
d'impuissance où on avait
about
l'impression qu'on
sustainability,
aurait
because at the end of the
envie de
program, once
continuer de les
it
accompagner, qu'on
concluded, it
aurait
brought
de
us to a
continuer de les
feeling of
accompagner vers
powerlessness, because
leur
we would have wanted
épanouissement,
to
vers
continue
leur
to support
adaptation et leur
and
réintégration ici
accompany these families through their work of integration here. And so the work we've done through other activities had to do with integrating elders of the community. So we saw, we see here in the pictures these intergenerational, intercultural happenings that were very important for these immigrant and refugee communities and families. These families often have been uprooted from their country and have to rebuild themselves here in Canada. So intergenerational work allow for building links and connections. The families found an adoptive grandma, for instance, and families found that they could create this feeling of family unity. And symbolic families were recreated through these cultural and intergenerational meetings.
Une grand-maman, donc
There
qui
was
était présente dans les activités.
the elders who were there and who represented symbolically also grandmothers and grandfathers. And it had to do with working through connection and helping to recreate this feeling of belonging. And this is magic, truly. And I would like to talk about adaptability. We talked about it, but so when we talk about art with immigrant families, we are in a reality that keeps changing. Some families are going through various fast changes according to their situation. So often we had to go to them. We had interventions in parks, at their houses, and in community centers. So that allowed us to find the best formula, the best way to do it for each group, each intervention. For the future, we would like to build and reinforce the connections already present in the community. So partnerships, for instance, with workers at schools and other community workers in the neighborhood, and also go towards cultural organizations, art galleries, etc., to be able to create not only this social net, but cultural net that allows to ensure the well-being of these families and the healing work and the sustainability. Because what we want is the families to feel connected to whatever they have in their community. Yes, there were families that were more vulnerable and that needed continued support. We now have a social pediatric center where these families were referred to, and also art therapists who will be able to pursue this work and support the families longer and refer them to other organizations if need be. That was very important for us. That really reassured us, because there are families with which we did not want to finish the process and leave them there. So we were able to find references for a continued support to their pathways. And we tried to also create tools of expression as those we showed you earlier, so that the families continue to use them as they need them when they find things are not going as good as they could, as well as they could, and they have to go back to communication, or whether there are some conflicts and where communication is hindered, so that they can use these tools that we've left them and co-created with their friends, because these tools, we didn't bring them like that ourselves. These were co-created tools that were appropriate for each and pertinent for each family. And there were also groups and families that continued with us through other workshops. Some participants lasted, stayed a long time with us, just like Kristen said in her group. We had participants who stayed a long time with us too. And then we wanted to develop adapted evaluation tools, assessment tools. We realized that these tools had to be pertinent for each community in order to be useful. So we've been reflecting more and more as we get to know a particular community, we can adapt the tools, the assessment and evaluation tools, so that they're better adjusted, better adapted to the situation as well. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so one thing I want to pick up on is partnership. Partnership really allows for sustainability to happen in a lot of ways. So you can see here, this is a quilt of images featuring arts and culture visits. This was one way to continue not only to build and strengthen relationships, but also to expose these newcomer families to different sites in the city. So these outings were to the Royal Ontario Museum or the Art Gallery of Ontario, and participants were able to bring their friends and family. Again, that idea of intergenerational invitation. And they also reunited with participants months after the end of a program. And this really increased, the agency's also efforts to social prescribing, offering non-medical community-based services to improve a participant's health. It also emphasized that settlement and healthcare agencies are not the only places to receive mental health and well-being support or knowledge or gathering. It could be a gallery or a museum or a library that can be places of respite, regulation, and beauty. One of my favorite memories shown in this picture is seen on the right-hand side. We visited the Textile Museum of Canada, and they had their global collection and exhibition. And so many of the participants were able to identify different textiles that were seen and actually made by their grandmothers and their mothers. So they were being reflected in these public sites. They also engaged in a 6-week community makers program where they worked on very small fabric tiles, which then came together into an exhibition. And you can see the excitement of them pointing to their families, what they had created. And it built their sense of confidence. It reinforced this idea of belonging greater than our family unit. And it increased, their self-esteem. And that translated into other areas of their life, maybe choices within healthcare and settlement as well. Next slide. And we come to this very colorful photo, which I love. On the left-hand side, we have a palette filled with a lot of dried powdered herbs, part of this program called Colors of the Earth. And this program emerged from feedback that we received from the HEAL participants. Even though many of them received art packages, which included, sketchbooks, pencil crayons, oil pastels, they were still wanting to create more in their own homes. But, sometimes art materials are not that accessible. But what if I told you that you have art materials right in your own kitchen or in your own home? And so our team came together, and it was so timely that we met one of our community artists, Mercy Verdugo, and she specialized in natural dyes and pigments. And so we brought together this artist and dietitians, and we created this program to make pigments or paint out of things like turmeric, chocolate, mint, cinnamon, and beetroot. And so many people were able to bring that knowledge back in their own homes, teach their families and their children, and continue to engage in the art process. And then on the right-hand side, you can see 3 women, one of them a very long-term volunteer, another one a health ambassador, but they are participating in Art for Wellbeing activities within the clinic waiting room. We know that waiting rooms are often filled with stress or anxiety, a lot of uncertainty. And so before they go to see their healthcare provider, they're able to engage in these micro-learning bits of arts for well-being. And so you can see the table is covered with paper fruits, and it's a metaphor, another metaphor, Just as we nourish our bodies with nutritious food, we also need to nourish our minds with positive practices like mindfulness, grounding, orienting to your surroundings. And so this is also part of our sustainability plan. That again, how is art percolating and seeping into the various places within healthcare and settlement agencies? Because it has very, very profound ways of drawing attention to our health and well-being. Next slide.
Merci, Kristen. Alors, on
Thank you,
a abordé
Christine.
beaucoup le
So
pouvoir de l'art,
we talked
aujourd'hui, le
about the
pouvoir de
power of
l'intervention
art, the
auprès des
power of
familles migrantes et
artistic
réfugiés.
intervention
Et
with
on aimerait
immigrant and
vous
refugee
laisser
families.
sur un
And we would
message
like to
d'espoir
leave you
sur comment
with a message of
intégrer
hope
l'art au sein de vos
about
interventions également.
integration,
Donc,
building
pour ce
art
faire,
within
on aimerait
your
parler
work
comment
as well.
l'intégration des
So
nouveaux
we would like
arrivants
to
et
talk about
des
how
réfugiés passe
integrating
beaucoup par l'empowerment,
newcomers
bien
goes
sûr, et
goes
par le
with
soutien de la résilience. Ces
empowerment
familles-là sont les
and
propres experts de
resilient
leur vie.
support. These
Ils connaissent
people
leurs ressources, mais
know
parfois
the
ils ont
best
besoin
expert on their own
d'être
life. They
soutenus et
know
accompagnés
their
pour se
resources, but
reconnecter avec
sometimes
leur
they need
force
to be
intérieure,
accompanied to
avec leur
reconnect where
capacité
their inner strength
d'adaptation
and their
et
capacity for adaptation
avec leurs rêves
and
face à leur
their
avenir. Donc,
dreams as
pour nous,
well
ça passe par la
uh,
reconnaissance des
for the
forces, comme on l'a
future.
nommé.
So
Et tout ce
we
travail d'empowerment par
work
l'art
through art, therefore,
devient un tremplin pour la vie des
to
familles immigrantes et
offer
réfugiés
a
vers
board
une vie
towards
plus harmonieuse pour les familles, mais aussi une
a
vie
better
plus
life, a more
épanouissante où ils peuvent
harmonious
se
family life,
projeter dans l'avenir
and
et projeter
a life
la
where they
place
can
qu'ils souhaitent
bloom
prendre dans
in the
cette société
future
d'accueil
in
qu'ils
life,
ont choisie.
and to help people
Le
know
travail
what their
d'intervention par l'art
space will be
nécessite
within this
aussi parfois
society.
de faire
That
confiance au
and
processus parce
often
que
as
ce
well,
n'est pas parce
we
qu'on est dans
need
le
to
plaisir et
trust the
le jeu
process.
par
It
l'art
is not
qu'il n'y a
because
pas parfois
this is
des embûches
a
ou des
play
blocages ou des ralentissements
intervention
dans le
through
processus.
art.
Et tous
That doesn't
ces
mean that there is
éléments-là
not
ils font
some
partie du
uh,
processus et ils sont normaux.
blocks,
Donc, des fois, ça
some
aide de
obstacles
relativiser et de
to
penser
work with
au
or
fait
to
que
work
même
through
si parfois ça ne
in
va pas
this
aussi
work.
rapidement qu'on le
So
souhaite, même
sometimes
si
we think,
parfois on
oh,
peut
it's not
vivre des
going as
défis ou des
fast as we
redoutes,
would like,
le
or sometimes
processus
there are
suit son
challenges
cours
for
et
recruiting, but the
les défis
process
ne sont que des
follows
occasions,
its
en fait,
course, and
d'apprentissage pour
challenges
mieux s'adapter,
are
encore une fois,
opportunity to
aux réalités
learn,
des
to
familles qui sont
better adapt
diverses.
to the reality of
Euh,
these families
donc,
that are
la
that
flexibilité, comme on l'a
diverse.
nommé, la
And so
créativité
there
de
is
nos
flexibility,
interventions
creativity
sont,
in our interventions.
la clé du
The
succès pour
flexibility and
une
creativity
intervention par l'art
is the key to success. True
adaptée vraiment
art
aux besoins des
work
familles qui
that's
vivent des
adapted
défis
to the needs of
ou des rêves
families living
uniques à
through
chacun.
this challenge and the
Quand on
unique
a
dreams to each.
réfléchi
When we
au message
was
d'espoir,
thinking
on
about
a
the
choisi cette photo
message of
parce qu'elle
hope, we
représente
chose this
comme
picture
une ouverture
because
au-delà des différences
it represents
culturelles,
an opening that
au-delà
goes further
de
than
toutes les
cultural
différences
differences
qu'on peut
and
avoir.
all
Celle-ci était un
human
atelier où
differences that
un aîné
exist.
a amené une chanson de
So
sa
this is
culture,
where one
dans une
person would
langue que
bring a
très peu
song
de personnes
from their
connaissaient.
culture in a language
Et
that no one
il a
else
amené sa
would
guitare et
know.
il
And
a appris au groupe de
this
chanter
person brought
une
his guitar
chanson
and
très
taught the
enjouée,
group this
très
very
joyeuse à
lively
tout le
and
monde, même
happy
s'il ne parlait
song
pas la
to
langue.
everyone,
Alors tout
even
le monde
though
s'est ouvert à
it
ces
was
jours-là et tout le
another
monde a
language.
participé et a appris la
So the
chanson.
group was open
Pour nous,
to
ça a
learn
été
this song. And
une
for
photo
us,
qui montre
it's
l'espoir au
a
sein de nos
picture that
interventions,
shows
dans le sens
the
que
hope in
il faut
our work
sortir de la
because
zone de confort
then
en tant
it shows we have to
qu'intervenante, mais
get
aussi
out
en
of
tant
our
que
comfort zone as
eux
or-
aussi participants,
organizers, but
s'ouvrir à
also
autre
as
culture
participants
dans un
to
pays
be
qui est très
open to other
multiculturel, dans
culture
un endroit très
in a country
multiculturel, s'ouvrir aux
that's quite
autres,
multicultural
avec les
and
défis de la
to
langue
be
et
able to
pouvoir créer
smile to
quelque chose
others, even
ensemble.
though there is a
Et c'est créer
linguistic
une
challenge,
communauté, c'est
but
créer
to
une
be
nouvelle
able to
façon
create
de
something
vivre,
together, a community, a new way of
co-créer une vie
living, to co-create
en harmonie.
an
On veut
harmonious
tous
life.
être heureux dans la
We
vie.
all want
Alors,
to be
ces genres
happy and to have this
d'attitudes-là en face de
kind
la
of
vie,
harmonious
comme
life.
s'ouvrir
So
aux autres
we
et
really
s'engager,
think about this as an opening and
oser changer, être
as
libre comme
trusting
Laurence disait,
yourself to dare
c'est
to
vraiment
participate, dare
un
to
facteur d'espoir
bring
de
your
pouvoir retrouver
own
l'équilibre dans la
self
vie.
to the community
Aussi,
so you
ces
can
rencontres comme celle-ci,
get
comme
to
des rencontres de
back to some
co-développement comme
balance in
on
your
a
life.
aujourd'hui,
And
c'est aussi un message
the
d'espoir parce que ce
work
partage
that
de
we do,
connaissances que
like what
nous
we're
vivons
doing
en ce
today,
moment,
is also a
ça nous
message
permet
of
de
hope because
nourrir
this
notre pratique, de nous
sharing
nourrir
of knowledge
pour
allows us
nos
to
idées,
build,
de nous nourrir, de se
to
nourrir pour découvrir de
nourish
nouvelles
our
perspectives et
mind
aussi
and
co-créer de nouvelles
our
façons
ideas for
de
new
répondre à nos
perspectives
sociétés
and
comme
new
intervenants.
thoughts on how we
Donc,
can respond
je trouve
uh,
que
to our society. So I
c'était
think
une super façon
it was a great way
un
to
peu commencer à achever
start
cette rencontre en parlant de l'espoir et
think
comment on peut
start
faire
concluding
pour
our meeting
nous
here
ouvrir
before
à
we
avoir une
go to
meilleure
questions,
vie,
but to talk
à
about
recréer une meilleure
hope
vie où
and
l'harmonie et le
how we
bien-être
can
peut
help to
être
create a new life
rencontré,
that's
peut
more
être possible.
harmonious and with a lot of
Prochaine
well-being, and that's
diapositive, s'il vous
a
plaît.
possibility. Next slide, please.
Thank you. So we've now come to our final piece, the rubber ducky returns and the nest building. And so you can see the nest has become so vibrant, a colorful home, and it is cozy and thriving. And on the right-hand side, you can see this was one of the biggest surprises that I experienced, or one of the biggest surprises in the program was on the very last day. One of the artist facilitators lifted that rubber ducky, and there you can see it gave birth to many, many chickadees. And I had a friend who asked an artist, how do you know when an art piece is done? How do you know when you're finished with an art piece? And the artist said, when a new art form or a new art is birthed. And so in the same way, this process continues ongoing, the process giving birth to new things. And I think that's what I love about this moment, and everything that, we've been speaking about today is a symbol of rebirth. The end of something is the start of something new. And so when we engage in the arts, I'd like to think about arts as a health behavior, right? Much like exercise, eating nutritious food, getting enough sleep, participants engage in these habits. It becomes a health behavior to improving their mental health and well-being. So, at a participant level, so many of them, 3 months, 6 months, years later, they still have adapted so many of those tools and practices in their own life. At an organizational level, I would say artists and art helps us to think differently, different than maybe what we're already doing at the moment. And maybe at an even greater level, at a policy level, what does it look like for settlement and healthcare to include art as a viable, effective, and valued part of how we think about newcomer mental health? And so, next slide, we're going to return to our prompts here at the beginning of this session. Notice and observe. And I'm actually just going to switch exactly to the last slide, which is all our photos combined, and continue to ask yourself, what surprised you? What was new for you? What made you hopeful or feel inspired? What resonated with you or aligned with your experience? And what were you curious about? So I think the Knowledge Hub has actually a mini activity where you can give feedback on some of these reflections.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen, Fernanda, and Laurence, for that gallery walk. It's been a lovely afternoon. We, I am, I'm really excited to participate in this as well and lead in my reflections. And we are going to put these questions into a poll. So keep an eye on that below. We also want to acknowledge that the Q&A box was mistakenly closed. So if you have questions for the presenters, please put them in there now. And after we do our reflection activity, we will be sure to get them to our presenters. So I think our
Yeah.
first, do you want me to go?
Yeah, I can start us off
Okay.
for Jessica and Sabri. So going through the gallery tour with us, what was surprising to you?
Okay, I can start, and then yeah, our colleague Sabri is going to join us in French, so make sure that your interpretation is on. So something that really surprised me was it continuously surprises me and what we actually call art, right? It's not just painting, it's not just crayons, um, it's dance as well as movement. And, I was really struck by the image where two people are standing in a circle in dialogue with each other. And one that really sent home to me was that art is about connection, and those two people were connecting, and so we get to call that art as well, and how healing and important that connection is for newcomers and for all of us.
Thank you, Sabri.
Ouais, mais en fait, je vais y aller aussi. Et puis, moi, la
Okay.
chose qui m'a le plus surpris,
So what
c'est
really surprised me the
la
most
simplicité.
is how
Un
powerful
dessin,
simplicity
une
is.
chanson,
A drawing, a song,
qui ont
a
permis, dans ce que vous
story.
avez montré avec vos deux projets, de
And
libérer
what
des
you've
émotions
shown
qui
in
sont
both of your
profondes et
projects is
parfois
that
de
these
raconter un moment
enable
qui,
people to really free
qui
up
marque leur vie,
free
une
their
part de leur vie
emotions,
que
and
peut-être ils n'avaient jamais
sometimes
pu
they're able
partager
to
auparavant.
tell a
Et
little
ça,
part of their lives that they might not have been able to tell
à
before.
partir
And I
de votre
found that
présentation.
extremely surprising in your
J'ai aussi beaucoup
presentation.
aimé comment vous
And I also really
avez
liked
créé des espaces
how you
sécuritaires
created
finalement dans
safe
cette intervention-là
spaces
avec
in your interventions with the various groups.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm wondering, what are you curious about, or what kind of questions do you have? Yeah, what are you curious about after hearing what we shared?
J'ai-
Um, I, I am particularly curious, and this is personal. I am so curious about what the experience was like for the children who got to participate alongside their parents, and and how that made them feel, and not only doing the art, but in being in connection with their parent, and how powerful that would be beyond words, right? Without having to have some hard conversations or um, maybe language that isn't developmentally available to them. Art is a very powerful mechanism for them and their family.
Ce qui a éveillé le plus ma curiosité, je dirais que c'est
What really
le fait que plusieurs participants et
made me
participantes
curious is
se sont sentis
to see
entendus,
that
écoutés. Ça, c'est
many
important parce
participants
que
said that they were
de
they
voir
finally felt
comment
that they
est-ce
were being
que
heard.
l'art
And
a
so,
donné une voix
I saw
là où
how
parfois les
art
mots ils
had been
sont
able to give people a
limités.
voice where words might
Qui a
not come
éveillé
to
aussi
them.
curiosité, mais là, c'est
And
plus
something else
l'expérience
that
aussi
made me
par
curious, and
les
this is
écoutes.
more coming from the
Et
social worker in
je suis vraiment
myself.
curieux de savoir
I'm really
comment les
curious
personnes
to
qui ont mené
know
cette écoute-là
how the
avec vous
facilitators for these groups
ont réussi à créer ce sentiment de
succeeded in
confiance
creating
et
this feeling
toute,
of confidence,
toute la lourdeur
trust,
parfois de leur histoire, les traumas qu'ils ont
have
vécus,
people
de
be
savoir comment est-ce que
comfortable,
vous
even though their stories can be so heavy and there's so much trauma. I'm really curious to know how you managed to do that, because that really resonated with me.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. And the last question that we have, alongside curiosity, are what questions do you now have?
You know, my question is very close to Sabri's, and um, you shared all of these amazing examples of families engaging in the different activities and in the art, um, and how hard it is to process and live through so many of the traumatic experiences that they had. And I'm wondering how you got them in the door, right? You did such a beautiful job of building the nests as you shared, and but I'm wondering how it was that you got them into the space and into able to engage in the art itself.
Euh, les questions que je me pose, c'est
The
plus
questions I'm asking myself
comment
are
pérenniser
about what
le
comes next. How can we make this initiative sustainable? How can
que
we
ce projet
ensure
ne reste pas
that
ponctuel, mais qu'il
the
puisse
work
avoir
goes on
un ancrage plus long
and
terme dans
is
nos
anchored
communautés,
in the long term
que
within our
l'art
communities?
créatif il fasse plus partie
How
prenante
can we make
de
sure
nos
that
vies
creative
et
arts
que ce soit quelque chose
are
que
integral
nous
in our
faisons le plus
work
souvent?
and our
Donc,
presentations
c'est
and
ça les
something that
questions
we use more often?
que
Those are the
je me
questions
posais
I
pendant
would
cette
ask
discussion.
myself, and I was asking myself while I was listening to you today.
Thank you, Sabri and Jessica. Yeah, those are great curiosities and questions. And I think now we're going to jump into the Q&A section. So Fernanda and Lawrence, if you want to respond to anything that Jessica or Sabri have shared,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Yes, I think there's very interesting question that you guys have. Je vais parler en français et donc pour
See.
répondre un
I'll
peu
speak French.
à une des questions que Jessica a nommées par rapport aux
So,
enfants,
to answer some of the questions,
comment
so
les enfants
Jessica, you asked
vivaient
about the children.
l'expérience
How did the children
de faire
experience
de l'art en famille,
the
d'être
art
intégrés dans un groupe,
being done in a
puis être là pour
family, being
faire des
part of a group?
intervenants, ou parfois les enfants sont
Well,
ceux qui traduisent
sometimes
pour leurs
the
parents
children act as
s'ils
the
disent
interpreters for their
un livre en
parents.
français ou en anglais.
They'll
Donc, les enfants
understand what's in
ont
French or
besoin de
English
leur
and
rôle
they'll translate.
dans
So sometimes the
les
children are actually
contextes
often the
dans
children are
lesquels ils seront,
parentified
dans un nouveau
when
milieu,
they're in a
dans un système
new
d'accueil,
environment,
facilement
when
le
they're
rôle
in
de leurs parents. Ben, pas tous
in
les
a
enfants, parce que c'est
settling,
possible
and when they
d'arriver
settle
à
in a
traduire
community.
pour leurs parents
So they
ou
have to
communiquer.
perform
Dans
translations for their
ceci,
parents
les
and
enfants
act
ont
as
aussi, on a
communicators. So
proposé,
in these artistic meetings,
il n'y avait pas de
we were
changement
proposing they didn't have this role to
dans
play.
les situations. C'était,
In most of the
on avait des
situations,
moments de partage à la fin de
we had
chaque
sharing moments after
où
every
chaque
workshop
personne
where
pouvait
every person
exprimer ce qu'il
could
avait envie d'exprimer
express
par
what they
l'argent qu'ils
wanted
voulaient,
to,
par les
whether
contes,
through
etc.
arts or
Et c'était un
storytelling or
espace
other.
où
And this was
personne d'autre allait les interrompre. Ils pouvaient
a
vraiment
space where no one could
avoir
interrupt them
une voix.
and
Souvent,
where
les
they were
enfants
really
allaient
heard. They had a voice,
invisibilisés dans le processus de
because
création.
oftentimes children are made
Donc, je
invisible
pense
in
que
the
ce qui
creation
est
process.
bon,
So,
non seulement leur donner une voix,
in the
mais
immigration process. So,
on pense que c'est autant important
I think it's important for
d'aller
them to
parler
find
des
their
parents que
voice
de
and to
parler des
work
enfants, où les
with the
enfants
parents
peuvent
and the
réellement
children, where the children
montrer
can really
les
show
diverses facettes de leur
the
personnalité et
various
intégrer en fait
aspects of their personality
leur
and
bagage du
really
passé,
integrate their lived experience
Donc,
from the
Jessica, peut-être
past
ça te touche
and
personnellement,
their
je veux
present
savoir si...
lived experience. So I don't know. Do you have anything
OK.
to add?
Les enfants,
Yes.
souvent, au début,
Often
étaient des
at
fois
the beginning, children were
des
shy.
parents qui peut-être pouvaient pas communiquer comme
Parents
nous.
who might not
Mais
be able
quand
to
ils ont compris
communicate
la
with
dynamique
us, but
et vu que les parents
once
étaient
they understood the
accueillis avec
dynamics and saw
leurs
that their
limites,
parents were
avec leurs forces
welcomed
aussi, et leurs
with
forces
their
étaient
strengths and their
vraiment
limitations,
célébrées,
and that we
on se
celebrated their
montrait, il
strengths,
y avait un espace de sécurité
there
pour
was a
pouvoir
safe space
se
there for the
comporter comme on
children
veut,
to be able
physiquement,
to be how they wanted to be
s'exprimer comme on
physically,
veut.
to
Ils étaient
express
très fiers
themselves how they
de leurs
wanted.
enfants et ça aurait été un petit peu
And
comme un
they were so
câlin
proud of their parents, and that
ça
really,
unifiait les
they were,
enfants à
it
l'intérieur
really
et
bonded the
aussi
parents and
c'était
helped them
accueillant,
within.
ils montraient
And
leur
when
création,
children would
ils
show their
participaient de
creations or
narration,
show up or
jouaient un
take part in the
rôle pour
storytelling
parce
or
que
play a
les histoires
role in
doivent
the
se dérouler
storytelling,
sont
because the stories
interactives
that we did were
et ils
interactive,
doivent prendre des rôles.
where families must
Euh,
take on a role.
les- ils étaient très fiers d'être vus par leurs
They
parents
were
et
so
célébrés
proud
aussi.
to be
Et
seen
ça
by
les
their
permettait
parents
de
and to be
faire
celebrated. And
confiance,
this really
la
helped them gain
confiance
back some of the
d'estime de
confidence in
soi,
themselves, self-esteem that they had lost,
d'être accueillis comme tel et
to
vu par
be
les parents et aussi par
welcome
les autres
as they
personnes qui
are and to
étaient
be
là.
seen by their
Et
parents
Sabri
and by others who were
a
there.
posé une question de
And
comment
Sabri asked a
établir la
question,
confiance.
how did we
Je faisais
establish
beaucoup
confidence,
une dynamique
trust?
de
Well,
jeu au début,
had
à travers
a
les
fun
différentes
dynamic, a game
situations,
dynamic,
de
because
lâcher un
through
peu les
play,
chiens dehors,
it's a lot
de se laisser
easier to
aller,
let loose a little
d'avancer
bit,
beaucoup au
So we
début
used
des
a lot
jeux
of
par
play.
pensée. On va faire un jeu de confiance. Et là, au
We did a
début,
trust
on pensait, on
game,
planifiait, puis on voyait, on va faire
or
des
we
jeux de
would
confiance, on
plan
va faire
and
des jeux
we would
de
plan
mouvement
for
s'il y a des
trusting
familles qui
games, or we'd
étaient un petit
do
peu plus
movement games if we saw that there were
rigides
families
au
who
niveau
were a
du
little bit more
corps.
rigid
On
within their
essayait
bodies.
vraiment
We
de
really
faire beaucoup
tried
de jeux
to
où il y avait beaucoup de
have a
rire,
lot of play, where there was a
plaisir.
lot of
Et
laughter,
ça,
people were
ça
having
fait comme
fun.
la
And
terre, elle devenait fertile.
it was like the soil was becoming fertile. And once that happened, well, we were able to plant some seeds. And at the end of all the workshops, we had beautiful plants.
C'était beau à voir
It
parce
was
que
really
aussi,
beautiful to watch.
au début, il y a une
At
méfiance
the
parce qu'on
beginning,
pense
there's a level of distrust.
le- la société
We
d'accueil
represent
n'implique
the
pas en
settlers
totalité
community.
des statuts
There's
migratoires.
a
Alors,
migration
ils se demandent qu'est-ce que je peux dire, qu'est-ce que je peux
precarious
faire,
status. And
comment
so people
je
wonder, what
devrais
can I
faire,
say?
comment
What
je
can I
devrais
do? How can I
agir.
make sure that
Mais
people
quand ils
see me
ont vu
properly?
que c'était
But
pas dans ce
when
sens-là,
they
que
saw
vraiment
that
on
that's
était
not really what we were
tout le
there
monde
for,
pareil,
that everyone was
jouer en
treated
même temps
equal,
qu'eux,
that we
on
were
essayait
playing with them, that
de faire partie du
we were
groupe.
trying to be
C'était
part
comme
of
un
the group,
soulagement,
it's as
puis
if they were
je suis
relieved.
allée pour
And they
certaines
really were able
visiter.
to show
Ça,
themselves for who they were, let
ça
loose a
donne
little
beaucoup
bit. And that
de sentiment
really
de sécurité de pouvoir
let
être
people
tout
feel
simplement.
safe, that where they could
J'insiste
just
vraiment
be
parce que Fernanda a
pure and
beaucoup
simple.
dit ce
I
qu'on
would also
travaillait, c'était de
add
la confiance, mais
that we did work on trust,
l'importance de la structure des
but the
ateliers était
importance of
rituel.
the
Les
workshop
rituels,
structure
c'était
was
aussi
the rituals.
amplifier le
The
sentiment de
rituals
sécurité,
helped
confiance des
amplify the
familles.
feeling
Et à
of
chaque
safety and
semaine,
confidence and
les
trust that
familles,
the
les
families
enfants
had. So every
principalement
week, the
ont pu se
families, the
déposer
mothers
et
and
être dans
parents and
l'ouverture
children
plutôt que d'être dans la
um,
méfiance.
were able
Les
to
rituels étaient
open up and
difficiles à
find
ce
themselves in
moment-là
a
et les
safe
rituels
space instead
fonctionnaient que
of in
durant la
a
semaine.
distrusting
Et
place.
c'est
So every
souvent,
week we had
parmi
rituals.
ces 2 heures, il y avait des
So
rituels
within the
pour
2 hours,
sécuriser aussi
there were
les enfants
rituals, and
les
that made
parents.
children feel safe and
Alors,
parents feel safe.
on te lance la balle, Christine.
So
Pas
your
Christine.
turn, Kristen.
You shared so much, but I agree. I'm going to jump off your rituals that predictability really helped them because a lot of newcomer families go through a lot of uncertainty, changes that are really uncontrollable. And so the rituals are like anchors that they know they're going to have a check-in, a check-out, having these sounds or colors or, art supplies that are the same or different, right? But I think that predictability was really key. I think something too is the power of group. You said something about people, right? Like the children witnessing the parents and the parents witnessing the children. I think that's what happens in a lot of group work is that they actually encourage each other in ways that, oh, this person's going to be vulnerable and silly and laugh. And then it allows them to also open up to that type of, being that maybe was so foreign to them for so long in their lives. And that safety. I know one thing that we tried doing or did was kind of like mini pop-up workshops, even before a program started, to expose people to little doses of art making, because it is scary for some people, and there's a lot of hesitation and distrust, like you're saying. But if you give little micro, doses of safety while art making, people then start to gain, right, validation, legitimacy, affirmations within those. So then by the time you have to do a 12-week program, they're already attuned to you, attuned to the different art making things. And we found that really helped people. Yeah. Mhm.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, merci de nous avoir expliqué un peu comment est-ce que dans
Thank you so
l'intervention,
much. Thank you for
vous
explaining
utilisez
how you use
plusieurs techniques pour
several
pouvoir animer vos
techniques
groupes. Il y a
to
plusieurs questions qui sont arrivées
facilitate your groups. There are several questions that came into the chat.
Comment vous prenez
So,
soin de vous-même
how do you
quand
do
vous
self-care?
animez
How do you take care of yourself when you
ces ateliers
facilitate
et
these
à
workshops
travers ces exercices?
and
Par
when
exemple,
you
est-ce que vous prenez du
execute
temps
these exercises?
pour
So, do you
débriefer
take
une
time
fois que
for a
vos ateliers
debrief once the
et
workshops are done?
une fois que vous entendez toutes ces histoires?
And once you
Ou
hear all these stories, can you tell us a little bit more about
on
that?
pourrait laisser Kristen partir
Let's
pour
start
répondre à
with
cette fois-là?
Kristen this time. Okay.
Sure, thank you. So yes, we integrate debriefs at the beginning of every session and also at the end, because the strength of your team is really also the strength of your program and how you bring and invite participants in. And so we go through debriefing not only of the program, but how are you feeling today? How are you showing up into program? And what are the ways that you need to feel supported in order to facilitate well? What we found too, working with expressive arts therapists, is that we wanted the art facilitators to focus on the art making, the participants, and all logistical items like refreshments and TTC tokens and attendance were off their plate so that every single person, a part of the facilitation team, took ownership over certain aspects. Facilitation of programs for those who do programs takes a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and a lot of who you are coming into it. And so we did a lot of debriefing. One thing too is that a lot of the art facilitators asked for additional supervision. So we also provided that. Whether it's myself as a social worker or another social worker externally, we were able to provide, people with additional supports if they were experiencing, things like vicarious trauma or stories that were really difficult to deal with. And I'll just say one last thing is that, especially when you're working with newcomer facilitators, a lot of times they do resonate with participants, right? That idea of not even idea, the experience of countertransference is very real. And so we always in our intake process, when we go through the list of participants, we do identify what would be triggering for our group, for our facilitators, so that we can help each other during the session. And if you need to step away, you can step away. But there's so many ways that, we can do debriefing. And sometimes we also did art with each other that helped to self-regulate.
Oui, en fait, Christine a nommé beaucoup de choses qu'on utilise également dans notre travail
Kristen
d'intervenant
talked a lot
partenaire.
about
Bien
of
sûr,
things we also
on est
use in our
aussi
work.
dans une posture
We
où
are
on
also
valorise,
in a
comme on disait
position
tantôt,
where
le
we
jeu, le
value
plaisir. On a
the
énormément
play
de
and
plaisir
pleasure. We have a
à
lot
donner
of
ces
fun
ateliers-là.
to give this, to
Et bien
facilitate
que
these
parfois
workshops.
il y a des
And
émotions plus
often
difficiles qui émergent,
there can be harder
on va faire des rencontres
realities that
toujours
emerge.
après les ateliers,
We will
des
always
rencontres, bon, on
meet
peut les nommer
after
supervision
the
clinique, mais
workshops.
entre nous,
Well, we
on
could call
peut
it this
aborder les
clinical
émotions
supervision,
difficiles
but
qu'on peut avoir
we
vécues.
can talk to each other
Parce que
about
parfois, oui,
difficult
les
emotions
expériences de
that we will
famille viennent
have
résonner avec nos propres
got
expériences
experienced.
personnelles. Donc, c'est important
So
d'avoir une
it's
très bonne
important because,
capacité
yes, of course,
d'introspection, une très
often
bonne
we can
connaissance de
resonate
soi
to
pour
difficulties that are
travailler,
expressed
surtout quand on
during these
travaille
workshops. And so it's
par
important
l'art,
to have
parce que l'art, comme on
a
l'a dit,
good
c'est un outil
team for
puissant.
that.
Autant pour nous, pour apprendre à justement, quand
And
on a
more
des réponses
particularly
par
when we work through
l'environnement,
art,
à
because as we said,
reconnaître
art is
pourquoi on a
powerful.
ressenti face
And to be able,
aux
it's
personnes qu'on
important to
accompagne,
be able to
mais
recognize what
aussi
we've lived
pour
through
voir que
with people
on
we
doit
accompany, but we
avoir une
also
pratique réflexive
must
et des
have
rencontres
a
cliniques comme ça
reflective
pour
practice
aborder
in clinical
justement
meetings like
peut-être
that, debriefing, to be
des
able to
expériences qui
talk about
permettent de voir
experiences
une
that
même
allow
situation dans une autre
us to
perspective. Donc,
see
je
a
donne
situation
l'exemple,
with a
nous, on vient de deux
various
cultures différentes
perspectives. For instance,
et
Fernanda and myself,
souvent
we
dans
come
les
from two
interventions, quand
different
je pouvais
cultures,
nommer
and often in
un
our work,
ressenti face
I'll be
à une
able to
observation dans
name
l'intervention,
something I
et
feel
Fernanda peut
when I
m'aider
do
à
an
éclairer
observation, and Fernanda can
la
put
perspective
some
de la
light,
même
a
situation avec son
different
regard
light
personnel et
on a
issu
situation
d'une
with her
culture différente.
personal
Donc,
experience and
bien sûr,
culture.
ça aide quand
So
on est
this,
dans
of
une
course,
équipe
helps when we are
interculturelle,
an intercultural
mais
team.
simplement
But
d'avoir une pratique
simply
réflexive,
to have a
je pense que c'est ce
reflective
qui est plus
practice is
important.
essential, is
Prendre soin
the
de
key
soi, on peut
to
aborder un peu
take
plus, c'est
care of
ça, les
oneself
émotions vécues
and be able
et
to
la
talk
réponse
about
par
the emotions
l'environnement
we go through
aussi nous aider. Donc, je ne sais pas si
and
tu aurais quelque chose à
discuss
ajouter,
this
Fernanda, par
with
rapport à
each
ça.
other. Do you have anything to add, Fernanda?
Vraiment, on utilise les
Really,
outils
we
en art
use
qu'on a pour
the
soi-même.
tools,
Personnellement,
the
je
art
sais
tools
qu'aussi
for ourselves as
on
well.
utilise
I
ce
think you as well,
conflit-là
Laurence. We
pour
also
un
use our
travail
work
où
on
on
ourselves
travaille
to
intérieurement nos
work
ressentis.
inside
Et on travaille beaucoup en
our
équipe, on a beaucoup
emotions
de
and what we
communication
feel.
et de
We work in a
partage de
team. We
connaissances
have a
dans
lot of
un but de
communication and
transfert.
sharing of knowledge
On fait
within
aussi,
the team.
comme
We
Laurence a
also,
nommé, on fait
like Lauren
l'expérience de
said,
ce qu'on
we
propose
really
nous-mêmes
go through
pour,
the experiencing what
pour
we're
voir qu'est-ce que
offering
ça fait, qu'est-ce que ça
ourselves
donne.
to see
C'est
what it
vrai
does,
que moi, je suis aussi
where what we go
immigrante
through. It is true,
et
I am an immigrant myself,
il y a des fois,
and
comme dit Kristen, il y a des choses qui
sometimes,
vont
like
résonner en
Christine
moi,
said,
qui vont
there are
toucher des
certain things
fibres,
that
qui vont
resonate in
plus me
me that touch
sensibiliser.
certain fibers of
Nous
myself
aussi, on a le
that
pouvoir du groupe.
will
Fait que, on
bring up some
l'expérimente aussi avec, au sein de notre travail.
emotions
On est
and
beaucoup.
feelings.
On n'est
And
pas
but we
seulement
are in a
deux.
group. We're not just
Fait
two of us, so
on peut
we are able to share
repenser les
and
choses,
rethink,
revivre,
reflect
voir
on
qu'est-ce
this,
que
and
on
relive
peut être témoin de nos
certain things.
réactions et
And
de voir
we can
pourquoi, qu'est-ce
be
que est-ce que
witnesses
ça me
to each
fait
other's reactions
et
and feelings,
s'aider comme ça à
and we can
survenir
talk
de
about what
meilleures
it
réponses pour
does
les autres, mais
to us. So to be able to refine the response for others and for ourselves, and to also know our limits. It's very important to work within your limits, to be able to recognize your own limit and the limits and the participants' limits, because that's very very
Je pense qu'on a à peu
significant
près
point.
répondu, hein.
Yeah, I think we've answered the question.
Great. Thank you so much. We had a question for Kristen, but after she's done, I absolutely invite Fernanda and Laurence to answer as well if they have similar if they've had a similar experience. So can you please elaborate a bit more about the workshop where you explained boundaries to newcomers? They referenced the exercise with the two circles on the floor. They are wondering. Was there a conversation? Were there any language barriers? That kind of thing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brenda, for that question. So I won't retell the whole session, but it was a way for us to, so we laid out huge pieces of paper on the floor to create kind of like a paper island. And then everyone found their place on this map. And we asked them to draw a circle where they felt their boundaries were physically at first. They drew their circle and then we just observed each other. And then we did exactly, we entered into conversation about what it feels like to be within your boundary, what happens if someone steps in your boundary or steps out of your boundary. So it was a lot of reenactment and movement. And then we started writing things within the boundary. What does that look like and feel like in our minds? And so you go from, movement, something tangible, to kind of like that realm of meaning making and kind of more conceptual things. But this was one of many boundary sessions. One of my favorites was actually using clay, where we asked, just quickly, we asked two participants to make a clay sculpture showcasing their friendship. And then we gave them different prompts. What are sentences that crosses your boundaries? Okay, now take that clay. What is the impact on that clay sculpture, that friendship sculpture that it makes? Because different boundaries will impact us each differently. But it's this idea that they're really showcasing, through clay, through that drawing of the lines, the tangibleness of what boundaries are, because sometimes, it's not very tangible. Um, and then, a lot of our participants love this activity of brainstorming ways of saying no. And we would make them, reenact and very theatrically ask each other questions, and they would have to say no to that, respond to no. And it was, again, a voice exercise of how do we use our voice to say no to boundaries that we are not comfortable with. Mhm. Yeah, Fernanda and Lawrence, did you experience any activities around
Oui,
boundary?
nous, moi je vais parler d'abord
Yes,
d'une de
I'll
nos
talk about
activités où
one of our
on
activities
montre,
where we
quand on
show
parle de limites, on joue les limites, c'est à travers les
the
contes.
limits,
Parce
the
que les
boundaries
contes, il y a
through
des héros,
storytelling,
des héroïnes
because
qui vont
in stories there are
traverser des problématiques
heroes
de problèmes
that
et
will
ils
go
vont
through
rencontrer des
problems
limites
and
ou devoir
they
mettre
will
des limites des
get
fois.
to
Fait
their
que
boundaries
on
and
travaille ça
limits,
à travers
and
nos
sometimes
contes
they will have to
et
put them down
participer. Donc
and
c'est très bien.
establish their limits. And
Et
Ben
so
oui,
sometimes
j'ajouterais
the
également qu'en
participants can
plus du conte, comment
be
utiliser les
involved
différentes
in
formes
the
d'expression
storytelling as
artistique,
well. So
on
the
voit aussi la question des
storytelling
limites dans, par
uh,
exemple, les créations en famille, parce que souvent
shows
on
the
invitait les
limits, but
familles à créer
also
sur eux-mêmes, sur place, et on
creations, the
voyait le
creativity
niveau
as
de
a family,
confort des
because
parents et
often
des
we would
enfants de
invite a
partager
family
cet
to
même
create
espace.
something on the same
Comment
space,
allaient-ils
in the
répondre
same space. And
quand
so we were
un membre de la famille allait
looking at
empiéter sur leur
how
espace dans la
one
création?
member of the
Comment
family
est-ce
would
qu'ils étaient capables de
respond when
nommer
another
leurs
member
besoins par
would go
rapport à
in their
j'aimerais
bubble
bien
or
que tu respectes
their
cet
limit, their
espace qui est
boundary.
le mien.
So how
Donc, on
to
partage
help people
certains,
to say, I would like
certains,
you to
certaines
respect
parties de l'image,
this
mais
boundary.
certaines parties
This
sont
part of
protégées
the
car on a
image
besoin
can be shared.
donc,
This other part,
ça nous a amené
no,
aussi à être
it has to
capable de
be
nommer ces
protected.
limites-là.
So
On a
we were
fait
be
partie
able to,
d'activités de
we were,
mouvement
that brought us to be
où
able to
il y avait une expérience
name
de
these
toucher, de contact
boundaries.
physique entre le
And
parent et
so
l'enfant.
there
Et
was
on
also
pouvait
the issue of different
rappeler tout le temps
uh,
l'importance de
physical
pouvoir
contacts
nommer
between the parent and the
les
child.
limites de
And
chacun par
so it
rapport à l'expérience
brought
du
us again
toucher.
to
Comment
talk
on veut
about
toucher? Est-ce qu'on veut ne
each
pas être
person's
touché?
boundary as
Est-ce
far
qu'on
as
est capable de
touching,
nommer
who,
de quelle
where, how
façon
much, and in what
s'exprime
way
par rapport à des limites
donc,
et
are
qu'on
you
s'assure que tout le monde
expressing
soit
yourself
confortable
with these
dans
limits?
l'expérience
And we
et
wanted everyone
que ce
to
soit
be
quelle
comfortable with
partie
this
du
experience.
corps
Yes, for
qu'on n'est
instance,
pas
was
à
part of the
l'aise,
body.
qu'on ne veut pas toucher.
doesn't want to be touched, doesn't like that. Through play, we could look at what part of the body people were not feeling at ease with being touched at. So, because some children wanted to be more physical with the parents, and the parents had to also put some limits to their children. So that was very interesting to see that and to participate in setting up these limits, as Kristen was saying earlier.
Merci beaucoup. Merci Kristen,
Thank
merci
you,
Fernanda et
Kristen.
Laurence
Thank you,
pour
Fernanda and
répondre
Laurence,
à cette question.
for
Il y a
answering
plusieurs
these
personnes
questions.
qui seraient
We have
intéressées d'entrer
many
en contact
people
avec
would
vous.
like to
Est-ce qu'on
contact
peut
you.
laisser vos
Can
adresses
we
courriel
leave
pour qu'ils puissent vous
your
rejoindre dans
emails?
ce
Can we
cas-là?
send your emails to our participants here?
Alors, on va
Yes?
pouvoir donner vos
Okay,
adresses
that's
courriel.
good. We'll send them your
Avant de
emails, your
terminer, on
contact
aimerait, nous
information.
aussi,
We
vous
would
poser une
like
question un peu dans
to
la
ask
réflexivité avec laquelle vous
you
nous en avez
a
posé
question
quand on a
within
fait
the
la
reflective
la
thinking
visite
you've
de la
been
galerie.
talking about.
Et on aimerait vous poser
We would like to
comme question webinaire
ask
qui, donc
this
pour vous,
question in
c'est
order
quoi
to
vos rêves
conclude
et vos prochaines
the
étapes pour
webinar.
faire
What are
évoluer ces
your
programmes,
dreams,
pour faire
your
évoluer
dreams,
ces
and the
pratiques
next steps
auxquelles vous
that you
teniez
see
beaucoup, puis
to go
auxquelles
forward with your
vous nous avez
practice?
partagé cette passion
So
aujourd'hui.
you
On
shared
aimerait
your
savoir
passion today,
quels sont vos
and
rêves,
we'd
vos
like to know
aspirations pour la
what
suite,
your
pour
aspirations,
évoluer
what your
ces programmes.
dreams would be for the next steps.
Do you want to go, Kristen?
Okay, I can go
Kristen?
very quickly because it's on my mind. One of them would be going back to what I was saying about arts as a health behavior, really having that, that posture within healthcare agencies, seeing art as one of those health behaviors. And then secondly, it would be arts integration, meaning bringing on artists, community artists, art therapists within the team, within the interprofessional team, I think is a huge asset for a lot of mental health work in the city.
Mhm. J'ajouterais, ben, je trouve ça très important ce que Kristen
Yes,
a nommé, tu sais,
Kristen
on
said
souhaite
something really
aussi
important that we also wish
qu'on puisse intégrer l'art
to
davantage dans une
integrate
pratique
art more
de
in
santé
a
mentale où
health,
on
mental
vient
health practice
non
where
seulement faire de la prévention, mais travailler au niveau
we
de la guérison puis
work
de l'intégration des
in
familles par
prevention, but
l'art,
healing and
de
integration of
pouvoir
families,
élargir
and to
non
be able
seulement nos
to widen
partenariats.
our partnerships.
Pour la suite des choses, on veut
For
vraiment
the next
ben, comme on
steps,
a nommé
we would,
tantôt,
as we said
travailler
earlier,
un peu plus dans
work a little bit more in
l'intergénérationnel, l'interculturel, bien sûr, c'est
intergenerational,
déjà le cas,
intercultural. Of course, we
mais
already do that,
de
but to
travailler
pursue
à ce
that a
que
bit
on
further
vienne vraiment
so that we
tisser des
can
liens dans la
really
communauté et
make
que une fois
links
qu'on est pas en
in the
atelier avec ces
community.
familles-là,
And once that the workshops are
ils
done,
ont le
that these
sentiment
families have
d'avoir
a
la
feeling to
possibilité de
have
se connecter avec ce
connected,
réseau
to be able
qu'on
to
vient
connect
créer.
through this
Parce que
network that has
l'objectif, c'est
been
bien sûr
created, because the goal, of
de leur
course, is
transmettre la
to
volonté
transmit the
d'aller de
will
l'avant puis d'aller
to go
chercher
forward
leurs ressources
and
qu'ils
to
ont
go and
besoin.
get their resources that they need
Kristen
in their
et
community.
Laurence a bien répondu,
Kristen
mais je
and
pourrais
Laurence
dire plus au niveau
answered
comme
very well, but I would
intervenante
like to
qu'on
say,
aimerait
as
continuer à
a
apprendre,
worker, I
à
would like to
approfondir
continue
nos capacités,
learning
à nous
to
améliorer,
deepen
avoir de meilleurs
my
outils pour
capacity or,
répondre
and
à la
to
réalité
improve and have better
changeante
tools to
de ces
in
moments
view
un peu
of the
particuliers où on
changing
vit
realities.
mondialement et
Right
aussi
now, this
dans la petite
moment
communauté.
in the
Donc,
world
je
is
pense
quite
que des agents, des
different. It's
personnes
quite
qui puissent
particular. So to be
intervenir
able
d'une
to
façon plus
intervene
douce,
in
d'une façon bienveillante et
more
assertive, ça
caring
serait
and
vraiment
assertive way, that would
très
be
bien de pouvoir continuer
wonderful to be able to
à nous
continue
améliorer comme
to
équipe
improve
et
as a
aussi
team,
personnellement.
but also personally.
Oui, le travail qu'on fait
So the
aujourd'hui
work we
en
do
mettant en
today,
commun nos expériences avec
while putting in
celle de
common
Heal
our
avec Kristen,
experiences
je pense qu'on vient
with
aussi là, vraiment
Kristen, I think really
ben,
brought
enrichir
in
puis
a
renforcer notre volonté de continuer nos
strength and
interventions dans la
enriched
communauté.
Alors, on
our
va
will
profiter du
to
moment pour vous remercier aussi
continue
parce que
our work in the community. And
d'être
I'd
tous
like to
ensemble aujourd'hui, ça
thank
fait partie
everyone here, because
d'une
being
façon
together
d'élargir
today is a
notre
way to
vision et de pouvoir
widen
nous
our
améliorer.
vision and to be able to
Voir
improve.
l'exemple, ce que Kristen a fait aussi de son
And
côté,
for
nous mettre
instance, when you
ensemble en
think about
contact, ça
what
enrichit
Kristen said, I think that it really enhances our practice, and we are able to also have and think about questions which we hadn't thought about before, and to be able to open to the world and to have your feedback. This is very important to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. This has been such a beautiful and inspiring afternoon. I really enjoyed our gallery tour and this very, very passionate and important discussion. So thank you to all three of you for being here and sharing your stories today. We also want to thank our ASL interpreters, Alex and Joanne, our LSQ interpreters, Michelle and Lise, as well as our French language interpreters, Caroline and Sylvie. And thanks to the Learning Network and Knowledge Hub teams for your work behind the scenes. And we just want to remind you that the National Knowledge Hub Conference is coming up quick, and registration is still open. We'd love to see you there. This is also a friendly reminder to please complete the evaluation form so that you can receive your certificate of participation. A link will automatically open in your browser once the event has ended. Please note it may take up to 30 minutes for the certificate to arrive in your inbox. Please be sure to check your junk or spam folder. It may be filtered there. So on behalf of the Learning Network and Knowledge Hub, we look forward to welcoming you to our future webinars and events. Don't forget to sign up on our mailing list to stay informed about upcoming opportunities. Thank you once again for joining us today, and we will see you next time.